So last week I told you guys about the 5 things that I hate about my 2023 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 392. So I figured it would only be fair if I told you guys the 5 things that I love about my 392. So obviously the number one thing that I love about this thing has to be the V8 under the hood. This engine right here, of course, like I said, 6.4 liter V8, 392 Hemi, 470 horsepower, 470 pound-feet of torque as well. This engine right here is the whole reason why anybody would even buy a Jeep as expensive as this. So let's show you guys a quick look under the hood here. Obviously, we got the heart of the Hemi right over here. We got those bronze accents right there on the valve covers as well with the 392 logo. And of course, the bronze accents are seen all around the Jeep. We got those on the Rubicon here as well. Also on the 392 logo right there. Same thing with the Jeep logo. Same thing with the tow hooks here as well. So that's actually how you can tell a 392 apart from a regular Rubicon, because the Rubicon has those red accents. So moving along here, we also do have the alternator kind of elevated on a higher position, just in case you're driving through water and you definitely don't want to get that thing wet. So that's kind of why it's more elevated when you compare it to other 392 engines. So as you guys know, the 392 does come with a hood scoop, and I definitely do like the look of it. I think it looks very good, and it actually is functional. So it does have this hydro guide system which comes out right here, and this actually acts as an air intake for the actual air filter right here. So the air comes through right there, but it also acts as a kind of like a water displacement system as well. So if you're ever driving through a river or a lake and water actually goes above the hood, then all that water is going to kind of come through these little flaps here that are meant to get rid of the water in a safe way and not get anything under the hood actually wet. So there's also another flap right over here. So this hydro guide system is basically meant to make sure that no water gets into the intake. Only air comes through here and goes in there, and then of course water goes through those flaps that I showed you guys. So definitely a very cool system. Not sure how well it actually functions because I haven't driven through water that goes above the hood, but I definitely do think it's a very cool thing that they thought of. And yeah, definitely the hood scoop definitely looks very good as well in my opinion. There you can get another look at the hood scoop right there. Definitely think it looks very good, adds a whole lot of character to the whole Jeep, and you can definitely tell that it is a 392 because that hood scoop right there does add a little bit of elevation to the whole hood here as well. So definitely do think that it looks very good like that. Now in last week's video about the 5 things I hate about my 392, I did mention one of the things that I hate is the size and weight of this thing. The second thing that I love about my 392 is the road presence. So as I showed you guys last week, this thing is huge. It's an absolute tank. Of course, it has 35-inch all-terrain BF Goodrich KO2s on there, completely from the factory. It has those fender flare extensions right there to actually cover up the tires because they're so big. And of course, I showed you guys that air intake system, the hood scoop right there as well. And when you compare the base 392 without the Extreme Recon package to a base Wrangler, it's actually an inch higher. Now the Extreme Recon package adds another 1.5 inches on top of that. So this Jeep right here sits about 2.5 inches higher than a base Wrangler, but then you also have the 35s that you have to factor in, which add about another 2 inches of height to the 392 with the Extreme Recon package. So overall, this Jeep right here is about 4.5 inches higher than a base Wrangler. And this is also one feature that I like about the 392 and the new Wranglers as well, is that they do have these halo lights just like the Challenger had. And I really am a huge fan of how these things look. I think it really adds to the character and the overall presence of the Jeep. And of course, it also does have the side marker daytime running lights as well. So yeah, definitely do think that the halos look very good. Definitely adds to the Jeep's look here as well. So you definitely know what this thing is coming down the road. It definitely has a whole bunch of road presence. It definitely does take up a lot of space, so sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to maneuver in tight spaces like a parking garage, for example. And some people also do view, weight and size and road presence as a disadvantage when it comes to off-roading, because for off-roading, you definitely do want to have something more compact and lightweight, just like a Jeep Cherokee XJ. So like I've said in previous videos, I really do think that with diff lockers, my Jeep Cherokee XJ could actually outperform my 392 off-road, because that thing is way more compact. It weighs 1,700 pounds less than my 392. But along with that, of course, you do have a trade-off, because with this, you have a huge 392 under the hood And you know, you do have a lot better on-road performance with this thing, and I'm sure this thing performs extremely well off-road as well. I mean, that's what it's made for. It has front and rear diff lockers completely stock, has an electronic disconnecting sway bar up front as well. So I mean, this thing is basically the best of both worlds. Of course, you have both rear and front lockers here as well. You have your off-road plus mode, you have your electronic sway bar disconnect, and then of course it comes ready to go with 4 auxiliary switches right here. So you can press one of these buttons, wire in like a light bar, for example, and just use these stock buttons right here, instead of having to drill through the dash and put a different switch like anywhere around here. So I definitely do think that that is a very good feature, obviously. And then of course we do have the 4-wheel drive selector. One thing about this though is that it doesn't have an option for 2-wheel drive, so it's 4-wheel drive full time. You have 4 high auto, 4 high part time, then of course 4 low as well. Now of course there is a method to put it into 2-wheel drive, but that requires a taser. So unfortunately, if you want to do burnouts in your Wrangler, you're gonna have to get a taser and set it up that way. That brings me to the third thing that I love about my Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 392, and that is the fact that it comes ready to go from the factory. Now, if you do get the Extreme Recon package, like I said, that gives you 35-inch all-terrain BF Goodrich KO2s. They are 315 wide. You also do get that factory Mopar lift as well. Like I said, it's about 4.5 inches taller than a base Wrangler. And then of course you also do get those, like I mentioned, front and rear diff lockers, electronic sway bar disconnect. So to be honest, this thing, like I said, comes ready to go from the factory. There really isn't anything that you would need to add to this thing to make it perform better. Obviously, of course, there are always things that you can add to any Jeep, because there are a whole bunch of, you know, mods and upgrades that you could do. But I mean, for off-roading, this thing is basically ready to go from the factory just how it is. Now, usually the first things that people do when they get a new Jeep is, you know, lift, tires, then diff lockers after that. With this thing, for me, 35s are definitely enough. But of course, if you wanted to, you could still add 37s, which I believe would fit on the stock suspension. Of course, you could also lift this thing even more if you wanted to. But I mean, for most people, this thing is definitely going to be enough. Now, I'm sure there are some hardcore off-roaders out there that would say that this is definitely not enough. But, you know, for probably like 90% of people, this is definitely going to be enough for, you know, basically any type of off-roading. And it comes like this straight from the factory. So there's really not much that you could do. Now, one disadvantage of that is that a lot of people do like the process of building a Jeep. So if you are that kind of person that likes to actually, you know, go through the process of having a project Jeep and actually building it up and upgrading it yourself, then yeah, getting a base Wrangler is definitely a good way to go as well. But then again, you won't be able to get a 392 under the hood, of course, unless you do a swap, which of course could be another project as well. So it really just all depends on what you want to do and what your goals are, and, you know, obviously your mechanical experience. In my opinion, the 392 with the Extreme Recon package is pretty much the best Jeep you can get, and it comes ready to go straight out of the box, straight from the factory. You can basically take this thing anywhere, on road or off road. Number 4 thing that I love about my 392 is that it's highly customizable. Now, this applies to basically any Jeep, especially Wranglers, but you guys know there's a whole bunch of aftermarket companies and aftermarket support making upgrades for this thing, mods for this thing, and, you know, replacement parts for pretty much anything you can think of on any Wrangler. Now, like I mentioned before, this thing does come ready to go out of the box from the factory, in my opinion. But of course, if you want to, you can basically modify this thing however you want. There's a never-ending list of mods that are possible for any Wrangler out there. Now, that's one of the things that I love about Jeeps. Pretty much every Jeep build is different, and you can make it however you want. Number 5 thing that I love about my 392 is that it is the best of both worlds. Now, as you guys know, I had a Challenger Scat Pack before this, which this Jeep actually replaced that Challenger. And I also do have a Jeep Cherokee XJ, and I definitely do consider myself a Jeep guy and a V8 guy, and this Jeep right here is the best of both worlds for me, and I'm sure it's like that for many other people out there as well. And if I'm being honest, I think I'm actually going to have more fun with this Jeep than I had with my Challenger, because I can have fun with this thing on road. Obviously I can take it off road as well, and it just gives me a lot more freedom to basically go wherever I want. You know, I can fit in at car meets with this thing, I can fit in obviously at Jeep meets, I can go off-roading, I can go drag racing if I wanted to. So, you know, the list is basically endless of things that I can do with this Jeep right here, and that's why I think it's the best of both worlds. And I do think I'm going to enjoy it a little bit more than I enjoyed my Challenger. Not saying I didn't enjoy the Challenger, it was definitely a very fun car to drive. Took it on a bunch of trips, took it racing as well. But I do think that this Jeep, having the 392 and the capabilities of a Wrangler, I just think it's going to be a whole lot more fun. I'm going to be able to do a lot more with this thing here as well. So I pretty much love everything about my 392. There really isn't anything that I hate, even though I did come up with 5 things that I mentioned in last week's video, which I really had to nitpick with this thing. But anyways, like I said, I love everything about this Jeep, and I know it's going to be a whole lot of fun in the future whenever we start modding this thing, taking it off-roading, going on trips, going racing. But yeah, it's going to be a whole lot of fun. And one additional thing I wanted to add to that list is actually the exhaust button. So let me show you guys what that looks like here. If we go onto the inside of the Jeep here, you can see the exhaust valve open right here. Hit that and the exhaust will quiet a lot. So see if you guys hear on video. Yeah, much quieter. If we go out to the outside here, you can pretty much barely even hear it. Now, I only have 60 miles on this thing right now, and I'm sure as I drive it more, I'm going to think of more things that I love and more things that I hate as well. So I'm definitely going to keep you guys up to date, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you check out my other Jeep videos on my channel and subscribe for more 392 videos and Jeep Cherokee X3 videos as well.